Forces and Interactions P 2.2.1. What is a force? A force is an interaction, strength, or energy that is used to affect the motion of an object, whether it is a particle or the entire planet. If you try to jump off the ground without touching the ground, do you feel that it's impossible to actually not press any energy onto the ground and actually go up? This shows that forces always come in pairs, and you have to exert some kind of energy pushing down before you can actually jump. If you have 2 Newton meters held together and there's only one force being pulled from one of them, you'll see that the forces being read on both Newton meters are actually the same. Well, you see that a force always comes an equal and opposite reaction. It means that there's also a force being applied to this one. That was supposed to be being held still. If you have 2 magnets repelling each other and you're trying to chase it across the room, you're seeing that obviously the one being trying to attract is actually repelling the other magnet away. That results in the magnet moving each other around. This means the forces do not actually have to be touching. When 2 objects interact, a pair of forces arise. This is known as an interaction pair. For example, when a cube here is pushing down onto the ground, you're having the floor push you back up. They always have the same magnitude. It's the same type of force. And they always act in opposite directions. And also each object always has a force acting upon it. This is simply put as Newton's third law. For every reaction, there is an equal, an opposite reaction. In other words, the forces always come in pairs. Forces are vectors, so they're always represented by an arrow to point the direction and state the size of the force. If your force is acting upwards and it's a slightly smaller force, you put an arrow pointed upwards as a quite small one. However, if the force is pointing towards the right and it's a very large force, you put a very big arrow acting right. A contact force is when one object exerts a force onto a second object. In turn, a second object acting a force onto the first as a result, which is another example of Newton's third law. The object can end up being deformed as well on impact. An example of this you can say is a tennis racket hitting a tennis ball. A non-contact force is ones that operate at distance. For example, magnets. You can say the magnet experiment earlier that I mentioned is an example of a non-contact force. Other examples are also gravitational forces and mass, which are pulling. With mass pulling you down when you're not exactly in contact. Specific forces have specific names, such as friction, tension, and drag. There are many more names, obviously, but one thing to determine from all these different forces is that they all have different effects on objects which are affected by these forces.